I'm Pat Higbee, Energy Education Outreach Coordinator for the Center for Energy and Environmental Education at the University of Northern Iowa. For this Green Schools video series, I've invited experts to help you make your school more efficient, healthier, and a better place to learn, work, and play. Support for this video series was provided by the U.S. Green Building Council's Center for Green Schools, the Iowa chapter of the USGBC, and the University of Northern Iowa. This series was filmed at Iowa Communications Network Studios at UNI and other Iowa sites. It was part of the Spring 2011 Teaching with Energy course made possible with support from the Iowa Office of Energy Independence, Iowa Public Television, and UNI Continuing Education and Special Programs. Something as simple and wonderful as planting trees can save lots of energy. And that's why I've invited Meredith Borchardt from Trees Forever to be with us today. Welcome, Meredith.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here today to talk just a little bit about the connection between trees and energy savings. It's a great day to talk about trees. We'll talk a little bit about the connection between trees and energy efficiency. But I want to tell you just a little bit about Trees Forever, the organization that I work for. We're a statewide, not-for-profit environmental organization, and our mission is to plant and care for trees and the environment by empowering people, building community, and promoting stewardship. So about a year and a half ago, we launched a new program called Project Trio 2, and that's really what brings me here today. The capital EE in Trio 2 stands for energy efficiency, and then the Trio 2 is meant to rhyme with CO2. So some of the goals that we have for this program are to reduce CO2 or carbon dioxide, to increase the energy efficiency or energy savings, both for homeowners and public buildings, to do a lot of education and outreach about the benefits of trees, particularly energy savings. So thank you for helping me work towards that goal today. And to assist communities who have recently experienced natural disasters and are recovering from those natural disasters. So what do trees have to do with energy efficiency? That's kind of what we're after today, what we want to discuss. So just some numbers right off the bat. Shade trees can save us in the summer somewhere between 25 and 30% of those cooling costs. And then in the winter, trees can also help us save on heating costs, about 10 to 15%. And then one of my favorite little facts from the U.S. Department of Energy is that proper placement of just 3 trees will save an average household between $100 and $250 annually in their energy costs. And we just have to think back to some plant basics here to get started. We know that trees function as natural little air conditioners, and that's through the process of evapotranspiration. So they're taking in water, and then they're releasing water vapor and oxygen. And that has that slight cooling or freshening effect on the air. And we all know that when we've walked down a street and it's hot in the middle of the summer, and we suddenly come under the canopy of a big shade tree, it just kind of feels cooler and fresher, and that's that evapotranspiration at work. And likewise, trees are functioning as mini carbon storage units. And so just through the natural process of photosynthesis, they're taking in carbon dioxide, and then they're holding or trapping or sequestering, whatever word you want to choose, sequestering that carbon into their plant tissues, so into roots, branches, leaves, trunks. And so when we start to think about actually doing a project and planting trees for energy efficiency, location is really important. And this is nothing new. We all know how the sun works and the path of the sun, but I think this image is a good reminder to get us thinking about in the summer how the sun is really arcing high in the sky, and we actually have quite a bit of direct sunlight on the east and west sides of buildings. So we're kind of assuming this house is facing south. And so that's where we want to maximize our shade, the east and the west and southeast and southwest. And then in winter, when the sun is really low in the sky, we get a lot of solar radiation on south exposures. And so we don't want to block that in the winter. We want all the solar gain that we can get in the winter. So this is just kind of an idealized house here. Again, we're assuming this house is facing south, and we've got some large shade trees placed there on the east and west, and then we've got some evergreen trees in the north and west that are gonna help function like a windbreak. And a little more modern looking home here, listing out some of the best planting locations. West is best. That's kind of a key point to remember. If we can get big shade trees on the west and the southwest, that's really where we're going to get the most bang for our buck. If you could just choose one tree, that's where you'd want to put it. If you're on the south side, if you can plant just a little bit closer and then choose a large species that you can prune up gradually over time to, again, allow as much of that sunlight in the south in the winter as you can. So location is really important, and species selection is also a really important thing when it comes to trees and energy efficiency. So you can see the tree on the far left there is probably a crabapple or kind of a smaller ornamental tree, and I like crabapples about 1 or 2 days of the year. But other than that, they're not performing for us very well. They're not providing a lot of benefits the rest of the year. So the tree on the far right is a larger, more mature tree, and those are the ones that are really going to give us the bang for the buck in terms of benefits across the board, whether it's energy savings, you know, thinking about the shadow that kind of tree will cast, if it's carbon sequestration or interception of stormwater, all of those things are much, much greater when we choose the larger shade tree. And there are a lot of cultivars out there that are pretty narrow and tight. And if you're in a situation where that's all the space you have, you know, that might be a very appropriate choice for your home or your school. But if you have the space, I'd really encourage you to choose that larger shade tree. So shifting from summer shade to winter windbreaks, whether you're in an open and rural kind of setting like the picture there in the upper left, or more of a modern looking home, windbreak trees, when we plant those evergreens, especially on the north and west, can help us a lot in the winter. And basically what they're doing is just diverting some of that cold winter wind away from a building structure, maybe around it or up and over it. And I think this image does a nice job of kind of showing how that works. So if we've got a cold north wind that's coming in and we've got a windbreak on the north side of that house, a portion of that wind, and research will tell us up to 50% wind speed reduction can be achieved with a good windbreak. So again, here's back to that same image of the house, just showing a summer view and a winter view. We want the deciduous trees, one that lose their leaves, up close to the home or the school, so that we're getting all of the sunshine we can in the winter, and then that shade, again, on the east and west sides. And that's a lot of numbers and images and things like that. And I did want to share just kind of an anecdotal story that I thought was worth mentioning. One of my colleagues was giving a similar presentation to this one in Muscatine this winter. And I think it was a service club, like a Kiwanis group. And after that presentation, somebody came up and told her that the storm had hit and they had lost this huge shade tree in their yard. And so they had to take it out. And the next summer, when they started running their air conditioning, their bill went up by $50 a month. And that was just a pretty incredible story, I think. And our images and things so far have shown a lot of homes, but really the principles apply to any building, to schools, businesses, places of worship, and so forth. So the next kind of section here, I've got some real world examples of school projects that we've worked on. And I hope some of you might be considering a tree planting project at your school, and maybe we'll get some ideas here. The Vinton-Shellsburg School District built a new high school building about 3 or 4 years ago in land that was in ag. It was a cornfield, so it was void of trees. And the picture in the upper left is kind of the plan for that site. It's a conceptual image of what that building and the plantings could look like. The prairie, the kind of yellow band there, is on the south side, wraps on the south side, and that parking lot is on the northwest side, just to kind of orient you to the directions. So you can see a number of large shade trees there, trying to get near the building and on the west side of the building. And then on the west side, you can just see in that very lower left-hand corner, you can see a windbreak that is envisioned to be planted there. In terms of implementing that plan, that planting, I think they did a great job of using students, and they did something that was really cool. One of my colleagues worked with an Americorps team of 14, it had 14 members, and had kind of a short train the trainer session. And so he worked with that team, and then they in turn each worked with 10 to 15 students apiece. So they got 300 landscape-sized trees, big trees, planted in just about a week's time with individual hour-long classes coming out when they could. The students have gone out each year and inventoried those trees and then measured the size, so they're watching the growth, and they've got some great data that they can work with in time. We also did a project at Aplington, Parkersburg, in that high school in Parkersburg. And to orient you there, you can kind of see the building structure there in the middle. It's below the football field. That's probably the most recognizable thing, is the track. So the building is there, kind of in the middle on the bottom, and north is up on this map. So Highway 14 runs just south. It runs east and west on that stretch, and it's just south of the building. And for those of you that are familiar with Parkersburg or have been there recently, that is right on the path of the tornado that went through. And so there weren't a lot of trees that were left in that area. So we worked with students and tree board members in Parkersburg to develop a landscaping plan. And I know the resolution isn't fantastic here, but again, you'll notice that same pattern of really trying to get large shade trees in there on the west exposures of that building. And then one other thing I might point out that I hope you can see here a little bit is that there are a lot of trees around that parking lot. And we know that those hard surfaces like parking lots and streets and sidewalks tend to act as, we call them heat islands, urban heat islands, where we get those surfaces are absorbing and really holding heat in, and then just slowly releasing that through the day. So those get really hot. Those areas get very hot, and we want to do all the shading we can around parking lots. So that's another great area to try to get some cooling shade trees in. After that plan was developed, we worked with 3 FFA classes to plant last year. Actually, it was into November. We had that great mild fall without much rain, and so we were able to plant fairly late, and you can see a couple of those trees going in near the building and some of the students that were helping plant that day. Another kind of school facility, and this is a project coming up, is at the Waverly Head Start facility. And I know this isn't the best map either, but I think you can kind of get the idea. Within the blue trapezoid, whatever shape that is there, that is the Head Start facility, and the building is kind of right smack in the middle of that. And to the right of that, there's a county blacktop that runs out of town to the north. So at that facility, they have 1 row of evergreens that is existing. And what we'll do this spring coming up is to add a 2nd row. Some of those trees are deteriorating a little bit, and many of them are pruned way up. And so just to kind of build up that windbreak a little bit, we're going to add a row of a mix of species in that windbreak, and also some shade trees. And that's something else I think to consider if you're thinking about a windbreak project, is mixing up the species a little bit. Sometimes we like this really monoculture look or uniform look and just choose one species, and if we can choose 3 or 4 evergreens and just mix them up a little bit, that's probably a little bit healthier for the long term. I put a slide in here about the Greene Elementary School. They have a fantastic local tree board in Greene, and they do an Arbor Day celebration every year in that community at the end of April. And what they have on their school grounds is a large grove of trees, and that's a mix of evergreen and deciduous trees, kind of on the north side and a little bit on the west side. And they add trees every year to that windbreak. So that's kind of another model, I guess, that you could think about, maybe not doing it all in one shot, but just adding gradually to that windbreak. So they've got a nice mix of species and also a nice mix of age of trees. And another picture here is in Manly, in north central Iowa. And they had a nice model, I think, for accomplishing a planting. They had their high school students, trained the high school students to plant trees, and then they in turn worked with the kindergarten class to plant trees. So not only did those kindergartners love to work with the big kids, but in having to teach that to kids, I think the high school students learned a lot in that process too. There are a lot of funding opportunities and planning resources out there if you're interested in completing a project at your school. Our website is listed there. We have a lot of programs that will help fund, that provide grant funding and also technical assistance from a field staff person for school projects, in addition to other kinds of community projects. And then I really want to draw your attention to the second thing, the Trees for Kids and Trees for Teens programs that the DNR administers. And those are specifically to plant trees at schools or in public areas. That's grant funding and technical assistance as well. And there are 2 grant rounds for that particular program, so you can apply in March for a spring planting or in September for a fall planting. So you don't need a lot of lead time on that to raise those funds. Also on that website, they do a different curriculum, a tree-related curriculum every year. So one year it might be the habitat that trees provide. One year it might be native Iowa trees. And they have curriculums for both elementary aged and junior and senior high school age students. And those, you can just download those. They've got lesson plans, they've got crossword puzzles, activities you can do outside. So that's a wonderful resource as well. ISU Extension has a lot of really good publications, and most of those are online now as well. So things like planning a windbreak, if you want to do that and get really technical about species and spacing and that kind of thing, that would be a good place to go. And then the Arbor Day Foundation also has some good resources, particularly about trying to celebrate Arbor Day at your school or in your community. And this is a fantastic resource. There's a website for the National Tree Benefits Calculator. And this is something that the Forest Service has worked on in several tree companies to come up with formulas that can be used to calculate benefits. You might have heard about iTree, and that is public domain software that's based on the very same formulas that this website has. And what you can do on this website is just enter a single tree. So you could go out on your school grounds and find a big shade tree, and really all you need for inputs are your zip code, the tree species, and even if you don't know the exact species, you can enter like just maple or oak, the size, so the diameter of that tree, and then the nearby land use. Is it in more of a park-like setting or near a building? And then you get a breakdown. You get dollars of ecological services, basically. So you get, in 1 year's time, how many dollars will that tree save you in energy costs, in stormwater interception, in carbon sequestration, things like that. And then you can take that information and do, you'll see the picture there is a big honey locust tree, and they made this giant price tag. And it's just a really good visual about what kind of monetary benefits that tree is providing in 1 year. So we're kind of wrapping up here, and these are some of the key points from the presentation. I'll just let you take a look at those. And that's the end of what I have here. Our website is there and my contact information is there. I'd welcome you to give me a call. You can also find our 800 number on the Trees Forever website, and somebody in our office can get you hooked up with a field coordinator if you want to go that route. But we would like to talk with you about a project if you're interested in doing a project at your school.
All right, well, thank you so much,
You're
Meredith.
welcome.
This was
Yep,
great.
You're welcome.
Thank you for watching this video. I hope it has provided both the knowledge and inspiration to help you green your school. Good day.